It's not really about how good your content is inside your episodes, but it's about how good you are at selling that content inside of your episodes. How are you communicating to your listener and creating unconscious demand for what you teach to help them understand that it's relevant for them, that it's worth their time to listen?
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
If you've been considering starting a podcast, or if your podcast hasn't yet hit its stride, this episode is for you. We're speaking with Courtney Elmer, the founder of the EffortLESS Life. She's also a globally ranked podcast host and creator of PodLaunch. She's known for helping 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs go from unheard expert to in-demand thought leader with a top-ranked podcast.
Courtney, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited for this conversation.
Well, us too, actually. And we're going to get right into one of the things that I am most curious about. Tell us a little bit about your background story and then lead into, if you will, your focus on anti-fragility in entrepreneurship, because this is one of the things I'm definitely interested in.
Yeah, my journey as an entrepreneur did not start out very conventionally. It wasn't like okay, I'm going to have a business. Here's what it's going to be. Let me go open the doors. My journey in entrepreneurship actually started with a cancer diagnosis when I was 25 years old. And let me tell you, this totally came out of left field. No family history, no reason, for me to wind up with a diagnosis like this. But it was 2 days after we had gotten home from our honeymoon. And I was sitting in my doctor's office following up from a sinus infection, some tests I had, sinus infection a couple weeks before the wedding. I'm like, I am so stressed. I can't wait for this wedding to be over. I thought my immune system was just shot from all the stress. Come to find out that was not the reason that, I had all these abnormal results come back from my test. And, my doctor looked me in the eye and she was just like, you were the youngest patient that I have ever had to give this diagnosis to. And she said, the biggest risk of this surgery, Courtney, is that if my hand slips, if anything doesn't go according to plan, you could lose your voice because your thyroid is so close to your vocal cords that your vocal cords could be severed and you might not be able to speak again. She's like, I know that's scary, but it's my duty. I got to inform you of the risks. Here, sign here. And I'm like, what? What is happening right now? And it was such a moment in my life where it made me stop. I had to stop. I had to go through treatment. I had to go through recovery. But I had never really slowed down to examine my life and to be like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I here? What's my purpose, right? I had just gotten out of college. Okay, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder. I was 3-4 years into my corporate career. I was doing well. I was working my way up. And this just totally stopped me in my tracks. And looking back, I am so glad that it did. I'm so glad that it did. I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you today. And the reason that I bring up the piece about the voice specifically is because growing up, I was always told my mouth is what got me into trouble. My mom was telling me that on literally 4 times a day, okay, it's top of the hour, Courtney, your mouth is what gets you into trouble. And one day I just internalized that message and I began to believe that, what I had to say wasn't important or that nobody really cared. Nobody really wanted to hear what I had to say. So fast forwarding to that moment in the doctor's office where the doctor's telling me, you might not be able to speak again. The irony of that was not lost on me. And it became very evident to me that I needed to make a change. How this ties into this idea of anti-fragility, it might be helpful just to start off with what the heck does that word even mean? Mm-hmm. And to me, it means growing through what you go through. And we talk a lot in the entrepreneurial journey about resilience, about, withstanding pressure, withstanding stress. I think we all have a very high stress tolerance as entrepreneurs. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this game. But resilience doesn't go deep enough. It doesn't go far enough because, you can be resilient in the face of adversity. Yeah, you can be stronger in the face of pressure, but it doesn't mean you're going to grow from it. That growth is a choice that happens when we are faced with difficult seasons in our journey. And this was a defining moment for me because that was a moment where I had to choose. I had to say, hey, I'm either going to be the victor or the victim. And I can either get through this and, learn something from it, make some changes as a result that became very obvious to me I needed to change. Or I can sit here and just, pity party and, oh, woe is me. And I can't believe this happened to me and, not be any stronger from it. Fortunately, I chose the former, and it literally is what led me to starting my business and now 8 years later to doing the work in the world that I do today.
That's awesome. Yeah. You hit several takeaways right there that Tanya and I believe also and apply every day in our own lives. I love what you said. Like you can, grow from the adversity, because I'm under the concept that everything you go through is just prepare you for a bigger version of that. So like if you're going through something big and you're doing, like you said, you're doing the work and like, well, how is this going to change my trajectory and how I'm going to focus on what I'm here for and that purpose, it's just going to make you stronger. And then you're going to be able to overcome an even bigger mountain down the road somewhere that will look a lot familiar to what I'm not saying that you have more cancer to face in your lifetime. It isn't the same thing, but the lessons that you have learned now are going to help you scale a bigger mountain, bigger mountain, bigger mountain. Am I nailing the concept that you're putting out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the importance of recognizing that we have a choice and that it is a choice, because bad things happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a lot of little things that lead you to a boiling point where you're like, oh, I'm so frustrated. You just throw up your hands in despair. Why am I in this business to begin with? This is so hard. It could be a lot of little things, or it could be something big that comes out of left field, like that diagnosis did for me.
Uh-huh.
And that causes you to reexamine and reevaluate. And I think in those moments of difficulty, sometimes we forget that we have a choice. It's easy to forget because we're just in survival mode. We're just trying to get through it. But when we stay in that mode, then we miss the opportunity to grow. Mm-hmm. We miss the opportunity to just kind of be in that uncomfortable place and say, you know what, this sucks, but there's a reason it's happening. Can I just get quiet and maybe explore what that reason could be? And that's very empowering, because in a season of survival, we often feel like we are choiceless. Mm-hmm. And that feels very limiting. But when we can recognize, actually, I do have a choice here, and I can choose, maybe not to change the situation, that's often beyond our control, but I can choose how I look at the situation. Not even what I choose to do, in response to it, but just changing how I look at it. Just that alone can help just crack open that little window in our mind that our mind needs to maybe see that different perspective and start to recognize, hey, this actually is happening for me. As a lot of us say, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. But it allows us to notice that and then to take action in our lives to make changes because of it. And it's so powerful when we can realize this. No matter what you face, no matter how difficult or how dark it gets, that becomes your light at the end of the tunnel.
It does, Courtney. And, it launches a lot of amazing, inspirational businesses too. Because, you could have just stopped there and been an inspirational person and gone on to just like build a business, but not infuse that story into your business every day. But a lot of the people that we work with have what we call a life-changing message to share. And that means they've taken something they've gone through, just like you say, grow through it, grow through what you go through, which I love that, by the way. But you've taken that to the next level to say, not only am I going to share this story, but I'm going to be an inspiration to somebody who might be going through something themselves, that I can lean into that. Was there any one particular point or one particular day where that dawned on you and you thought, I can do something with this?
Yes, I love this question because there isn't one clear answer. It's very much been an evolution. The first aha was, hey, I need to leave this corporate career and I need to do my own thing because life really is short. I know that sounds so cliche, but it's like when you have been in that moment where you're faced with life or death and you're faced with that possibility of mortality. I mean, it's not a possibility. It's going to happen to all of us at some point. But, in that moment when we're faced with our own mortality, it's like, whew, it just opens your eyes. And it really calls back into light of what you value, what's important to you, and why. What can I do with the one life that I've been given? So that led me to the start of my business. Now, I'll be totally honest with you. When I started my business, it was Courtney Elmer coaching. I'm sure, it was like the brand experts are probably like, oh yeah, there's a lot of problems with that, And it was like, nobody knew who I was. That doesn't tell anybody what I do, right? Or in any way that I could potentially help them. But I knew that I had had this major experience. I had experienced a lot of transformation from that. And I wanted to share that with others. I wanted to give that to others. But the problem with it was still very self-focused. I didn't see that at the time. But what I mean by that was, I'm okay, I'm going to get into this business. I'm going to help all of these people, but it's going to be a testament to my journey, to my story, to what I've been through, and to validate it in that way. And I very quickly realized that, setting out as like a personal transformation coach was not very marketable. People aren't walking around, saying, I need personal transformation. Like, not
On my time.
I want the great life, but it's like, no, I got these problems to fix first, right? Transformation could come later. And so that's when, going back to this story of my 9-year-old self, of, this belief that I had kind of driving everything that I did, that, oh, your mouth gets you in trouble. You need to show up and be a certain way in order to be accepted or rejected. You need to talk how other people want you to talk. You need to say what other people want you to say. And that belief really, really drove the first solid 5-6 years of my business. And I would create offers under the guise of serving people, because I wanted to serve people, but at the end of the day, I wanted to grow my business, right? So in my mind, there was this misguided belief that if I could just create what people wanted, then they would buy it and then I'd be successful. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was like the first 5-6 years of my business, trying to figure out, what do people want from me? And not standing on my own 2 feet as Courtney Elmer, being like, hey, this is who I am. This is how I can help you. You want my help? Great. I'm happy to help. If not, that's cool too. But this is who I am and what I stand for and what I believe in. And if you drive with that, awesome. And if not, there's someone else out there for you. I couldn't stand in my own power because I was giving my power away and I didn't see it. And I struggled. It took me 6+ years to hit 6 figures in revenue. And I share that because I know that there's someone listening right now who is experiencing this. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a revenue plateau. Maybe you did hit the 6 figures, but you can't get to, multiple 6 or to 7. Like, we all hit these ceilings. And we know as entrepreneurs, those ceilings often happen. They're just the 6 inches between our ears. Mm-hmm. But it took me a really long time to dig underneath what was keeping me stuck. So Tanya, when you ask about, was there a moment or was there a day where you kind of had this epiphany? I would say about 18 months ago, it became really clear to me how important the voice piece of my story is to me and to the deeper purpose of what I'm here to do. And reconnecting with that made it so clear to me that I needed to shut off one of our 2 offers, which was bringing in over half the revenue in our business. And it wasn't like on paper I could see, okay, this was the good offer, this was the bad one. They were actually both about 50-50. I mean, there was really no, strong lean one way or the other. But in my heart, I knew. In my heart, I knew which one needed to stay and which one needed to go. Because the one that I wound up turning off was the one that was like the rubber band, around my waist, and I would try to move forward and it would pull me back, and I would move and it would pull me back, and I had to cut that rubber band. And it allowed me to fully shift my focus onto our one offer now and how we really can serve people well. But it was recognizing that first in myself and shifting my focus from myself. Yes, letting my story inform what I do, but not making it about my story. And there's a big difference there. A big, big difference.
Yeah, there really is.
There's several takeaways there, because I know people out there are struggling with these concepts, and if they're not yet, they will. Like, right. So when you said, entrepreneurs are always hitting a certain plateau, that is always true. That is Bill Gates is hitting some kind of plateau right now, right? Everybody hits plateau. Jeff Bezos is hitting a plateau right now that he's trying to figure out a way around, right? And it's hard to imagine that the richest man on earth would be doing this, but they do too. That every one of us do these things. And so hopefully that's encouragement to people that are listening, because you can find help. You can find the Courtney Elmers that can help you get past those and move on with that. And then I really like the idea of the shift of focus from you and really, because we teach that also, you have to, like, your why is important, but you got to focus on why it's important to the people you're talking to, not why it's important to you. Why it's important to you is important to you and your family, but what their why is important to them and their family. And so you have to be able to meet that need where they are.
How do we connect the dots?
And I think there's such power, and tell me if you agree with this, I think there's such power too in recognizing that your company is an entity in and of itself. And so for growth, that's going to be important, especially as you start to take on more and more, employees and things like that. I found the shift in my company, in the real estate business, after I recognized, wait just a minute, none of y'all are doing this for Michael, right? You're doing this for Michael Carr and Associates. And then eventually we even changed the name away from my name because it didn't matter, like you were talking about earlier. And it didn't say what I did. So now we're Anything Real Estate, and it is an entity in and of itself, and everybody involved in that entity is out for the best for that entity.
That's true.
So I think those shifts are big for that person that's out there listening that may be hitting those walls that you're talking about.
And I'm going to segue into this part of it, Courtney, because what's interesting to me is your 9-year-old self is basically saying, well, everybody's telling me my mouth is getting me into trouble, so I'm just going to be quiet and not state what I really want out of life, right? And then you end up in podcasting, which is where you use your voice, right? So tell me how that decision came along, and just tell us a little bit about who your audience is and how you serve that audience through podcasting.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, it's the entrepreneurial irony, right? Like, all of our businesses, I think, solve a problem for us first before we can then turn around and help other people with that problem. And that is very much the case with me, being in the podcasting space now, helping other people start podcasts. Because about 4 years ago, my son, who's now 5.5, was home with me full time. He was maybe 18 months old or so at the time. I didn't have him in daycare. I didn't want him in daycare. That was why I started my business. I wanted that freedom. I wanted that flexibility. But I would be lying if I didn't sit here and tell you that was a really hard season in my business, because I only had the nap time nooks and crannies to do any kind of business related work. I mean, whether it was creating content, hopping on a sales call, doing anything, website update, whatever it might be. And I was so frustrated with short form content, because I could spend an hour creating a really well thought out carousel post, or recording a video, editing that video, posting it, and then winding up with like 2 likes, 4 spam comments, and 0 people in my DMs saying, hey, I'd love to work with you, And I'm like, this, I am getting nowhere fast with this. I didn't have a big budget for ads. I didn't have any budget for ads, to be honest. And I was struggling to reach people beyond my immediate warm audience, which I felt like I had tapped out at that point. And so it was a real inflection point, and at the time, when my son was awake, the only hands-free time I had was if I strapped him in the stroller, like gave him lots of snacks, and popped my AirPods in, and we'd go walk the neighborhood, and I would listen to podcasts. And I would listen to these experts telling me, hey, you need to do this. You need to change this. You need to show up this frequently. You need to be this. You need to be that. And of course, back then, still under this belief, like Courtney needs to be who everyone else wants her to be. I was like hanging on their every word. Okay, what do I need to do to be successful? Tell me. I want the secrets. I want the golden ticket to success and visibility. And one day it just dawned on me. And I was like, well, this is really stupid. Here I am listening to all these experts tell me what to do, but I'm not paying any attention to what they're doing, which was podcasting. Mm-hmm. And then I got really curious, because I was like, hold on a minute. If all these experts have literally built their own stage, their own platform for sharing their thought leadership content, their knowledge and expertise with the world, First of all, why couldn't I do that, right? Nothing's stopping me from doing that. And second of all, why aren't they teaching that, right? It doesn't mean that they have to necessarily be a podcasting expert, but why aren't they even talking about it? Because as I got really curious and started noticing what they were doing, it became really clear that their podcasts were the primary source of all the other content in their business. Source of their short form content. It was the source of their email content. It was the source of their blog content. And I'm like, that is smart. That is leverage. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. How can I turn 30 minutes, into 3 hours worth of, content or more? So that's what planted the seed. Now, look, I debated for a good 9 months, all the overthinking, all the overanalyzing, all the, over exaggerating of, oh gosh, what if this is not successful and then I'm a failure and, entrepreneurs, I did that for 9 months. But then finally, what really got me off the ledge was, the reason that I do my podcast is because I want a deeper connection with people than I can get on social media. I love having conversations like this. I love just that one-to-one feel of being in a room with someone, talking about something you have a mutual interest about. If I say something insightful that helps you, all the better. But that's what I really wanted, was that deeper connection that I could get in like 150-word Instagram caption. And that's why I started my podcast. And for the longest time, I had people reaching out to me, Courtney, how'd you grow that so quickly? And we had like 65 5-star reviews within like the first week of launching. People were like, what did you do? Tell me how to do that. Under the radar, okay, I had this other offer going. We've like built this whole brand around, being like the systems person, helping you scale your business through systems and all this. But under the radar over here, I've got this podcasting program that is growing organically. People are finding me. It's converting better than the systems one that I've spent all this time, money, and energy creating. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And I never wanted to be known as the podcasting girl. I'm like, oh, no. My what I'm here to do is so much bigger than that, right? And I resisted that for so long until about 18 months ago when I reconnected with why I'm doing what I'm doing and how my podcast gives me the opportunity to use my voice. It gives me a reason to show up and use my voice to remind myself like, yeah, Courtney, talk to my 9-year-old little self, your voice does matter. And it's okay to use it. It's okay to trust it, to say what you have to say and to help other people do the same. Because as entrepreneurs, our voice creates our legacy. We shape history through our voice. I mean, look back through history. Where would we be without the Mother Teresa's of the world or the Nelson Mandelas or, the Rosa Parks? I mean, name anyone who has had some sort of influence. Their voice lives on. That's what lives on.
And they didn't have podcasting. Imagine if they did.
Right. So this is, it just gets me so excited because now, okay, I don't know why I was so dense and it took me so long to see this before, but, now it's like, of course, this is what I would do. Of course, this is how I'm meant to help people. Of course, I would be teaching podcasting. Why wouldn't I be the podcast girl, right? And so that has been, the long and short of the evolution of my brand and really how I landed in this space and why I'm here to do what I do.
That's great.
What a beautiful story.
That's great.
Absolutely. So, Courtney, tell us. We're going to wrap up here. Although we could talk to you for days, so we'll have to have you back on for sure. What one piece of advice would you give to people about personal branding? You just mentioned your own brand and how you've kind of, had to reconstruct that, to really put your story out there. So, what advice would you give to others?
Yeah, this is such a great question because we're bombarded with so much information, right? Here's what to do, here's what to do, here's what not to do. And honestly, I would say the one thing that we all need to get really good at is listening to that tiny little inner voice because it whispers. And we are bombarded with so much noise. And I think that we often can forget that we have a say in the matter too. We have a say in how we show up. We have a say in what our brand is. We have a say in what we present to the world and how we're here to help and serve. And when we're so busy listening to the voices of others, we don't hear our own. And I don't know about you, but I have never seen a thought leader become a thought leader without actually sharing their thoughts.
Absolutely. Yes. And I'll take that one step further, even, Courtney. I love where you're going with this. I feel like they have an obligation to do that, to share that story, because when we go through something in our own lives, it's where we come up with that life-changing message, right? That life-changing message means we've gone through it, we've come out the other side, and we learned something that we wish we'd known before. And now we have an obligation to share that with other people to make their lives better. And I love your message. I love everything about what you're doing, Courtney. You've hit the nail on the head. This is what you should be doing, for sure. There's no way around it. We can see it from the outside.
And speaking of that, like, is there one consistent thing that you would tell podcasters out there that they need to be doing to increase their downloads or their listenership?
Yeah, well, look, this is where we could have a whole nother conversation about this, but
Part 2 coming soon.
yes, what I'm going to say here is something a little unconventional, because a lot of people are telling you, be consistent, publish at least an episode a week, share it religiously on social, get it out to your email list. If you can just show up and create really good content, people are going to listen, people are going to share it. And we're kind of indoctrinated with this belief. And what most podcasters get into the game and they realize, well, it doesn't really seem to work that way. I'm putting my best stuff in my episodes and nobody's listening. I'm sharing it every time on social media and I'm not getting anybody engaging with it, right? 20% of people open my email. What about the other 80%? Where are they? And so this can be really discouraging as a podcast host because, you've got a message to share. You want to help people and reach people with that message. You want to leave your mark on the world. And what I always say is, it's not really about consistency. It's not really about how good your content is inside your episodes, but it's about how good you are at selling that content inside of your episodes. How are you communicating to your listener and creating unconscious demand for what you teach to help them understand that it's relevant for them, that it's worth their time to listen? And this is what's so key for us to understand, especially as podcast hosts. I mean, it applies to our businesses as a whole too, but it's not so much about consistency as it is about differentiation. Creating demand through that subconscious communication that most of us are over here trying to get the words right. And okay, how do I say what I'm here to say? But it's not about that at all. It's about that connection piece. And it's about, do we understand our listener well enough to be able to position our content in such a way that solves a very real problem for them?
And I hope definitely that these fantastic things that you've talked about on episode 1 of More to Come, guys, with Courtney Elmer, is hitting at least that one listener, if not thousands, because it's very good, poignant information from the anti-fragile entrepreneur, right? Elmer, if our listeners, I'm gonna spin you right here. If our listeners have the freedom to visit anywhere in the world, which place would you recommend to them to visit and why?
Oh, well, come to New Orleans. We're talking about like physical places, right? Like, I grew up in New Orleans. Look, I tell people the only meal that I can make worth eating is a pot of gumbo. If you're ever in the area, look me up, come on down. But, it's such a unique place and it's such a diverse place. If you haven't been, it's a lot of fun. You should make the trip. I recommend avoiding Mardi Gras. Just, it's as wild as everybody says it is, but the city itself, the history, the architecture, the people that you will meet here really can teach you a lot about the world and about yourself.
Oh, that's great. That's the first time we've heard that too. We love New Orleans.
Yes.
Yeah, we love.
Yes,
I've actually got family in Baton Rouge, so I've been there a bunch of times. So
awesome.
I love it.
We'll connect next time we're down.
Yes, definitely.
And we'd love to try that gumbo.
I'll cook you a pot. Or better yet, I'll take you down to one of our favorite restaurants that could probably do an even better job than I can. Yeah, absolutely. Let me know.
You got it.
That's awesome.
Well, tell everybody how they can connect with you, Courtney.
Yeah. So look, I'm a very social person. I would love if you got something out of this episode send me a DM. Like, don't be surprised when I send you a voice message back and actually answer it. I mean, I'm in my DMs all the time. I'm on Instagram at the Courtney Elmer. That's where I hang out online the most. Our website, you can go to podlaunch.info. And we've got lots of stuff on there that, if you're looking to launch a podcast and you want to do it right, or you have a podcast that isn't growing like you expected it to, I'd love it if you'd join me for one of our workshops. I teach these on a regular basis. They're totally free. There's no pitch. This is not like a pitch fest. This is just come learn our methodology. Come see what we've done that has helped over 6 other coaches and consultants learn how to launch top-ranked podcasts that grow their business. Because if we can help you do the same, we'd love to do that.
Courtney, thank you so much for sharing your time and your beautiful story with us today. We appreciate you, and we do look forward to episode 2 with Courtney.
Absolutely.
Well, thank y'all so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.